Hello and welcome to Android Developers Backstage. I'm Tor Norby from the Android Developer Tools and Libraries team.
My name is Matthew Forsyth. I lead the Developer Experience Product Management team for Play, Trust, and Safety.
Patrick Baumann. I'm a software engineer on the Android Framework team, primarily package manager.
I'm Razdev. I'm a PM working on the Android Developer Verification Program.
Hi, I'm Naheed. I'm Naheed Vora. I'm a product manager on Android security as well.
The topic today is developer verification. So this is a policy in tech that we announced, I think, a few weeks ago. And it's been all over the news. And I've seen lots of confusion. And so thought this would be a really good topic to bring guests on and to have a chance to go beyond what you can fit in a blog post and really kind of dig into it. I think before defining what this is, can you explain what problem we're trying to solve here? Like, what is the attack vector that, we are trying to address?
Yeah, I think at the highest level, we're trying to protect users from malware and scams. The analogy I'd offer up is, and this is probably dates me a bit and probably older than many of your listeners, but there was a time when you'd go get an airplane and you didn't have to go through security. You could kind of buy a ticket and go straight to the gate and fly. Some bad things happened, unfortunately, the airline industry, and so now there are security checks. And so the TSA will verify your identity before allowing you to go through. And that's really what this is. It's an opportunity for us just to verify that developers are who they say they are, to kind of create a trusted ecosystem that users can trust and that other developers can trust to protect against the malware and scams.
Can you explain a bit more why we need the identity bit? Like my impression is the most important part of the airline security is to make sure you don't have something that explodes in your suitcase, right? But we have this extra thing about checking who you are, right? So on Android, malware can't access the camera, right? Because there's like a permission model. So, I have a hunch that there's some issues around like impersonation and things like that, right? Where you think you're using an app that isn't that app. I'm assuming that's related, but can you say more about how verifying who wrote an app, how that helps with security or malware?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, Android's an open platform, right? And we're not going away from that. And so part of that openness means that there is impersonation out there, for example. And so you want to make sure that the app you're downloading is from the developer that you believe that they are and that they're well-intended and, can't do you harm.
One more important piece is on Play, we've had a very positive experience with leveraging identity data to secure the ecosystem. The challenge is bad actors morph and change their apps very quickly, and it's difficult to keep track on that and stay on top of it. When we bring in an identity, we merge all the apps that belong to one actor, and if that actor does something bad or if that actor is suspicious, it tells us where to focus. We can look at these apps, we can take care of all of them in one go, so it makes the ecosystem a lot more secure.
I see. So before this, you could basically just declare bankruptcy and just create a new business right away. And that's what you're saying, is that here, there's more of a burden to have a person. You can't easily duplicate yourself with a new government ID. And therefore, it's trickier. You could maybe get your cousin to publish or whatever, but you're going to run out of cousins, right? Is that
exactly? And on Android, there isn't even the concept of a person. There's just apps. So you just release more and more and more apps. And there is nothing tying these apps together.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would add to that is like what it does actually when you think about the safety of the user, it becomes a whack-a-mole problem. And from the cost it takes to try to identify and make sure that users are safe on day zero becomes extremely hard. And so what we're doing is that with this identity verification, you actually are constraining the problem quite a bit. There is now new threshold that the bad actors have to reach in order to go and say that, hey, I need to go create new identity, and then I need to make sure that I don't get caught again. But other than that, if you reduce quite a bit of badness in the whole ecosystem, and that's a good thing for Android ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, so to get back to your airport metaphor then, so like this is clearly an extra burden for good actors, but we're doing it because the problem for end users of Android would be worse. Is that
That's fair.
Okay. So we've kind of tiptoed around it. What is developer verification?
At the highest level, it's a program to verify the developer's identity. I think that's very simply put.
And this is not, the Play Store anymore. This is a general Android mechanism.
until today, we require developers on the Play Store to verify their identity. Like I've mentioned, that's been very effective and successful in keeping users safe. And now we're trying to expand that umbrella and bringing it to the whole Android ecosystem. It is important to note that developers who have already verified are not going to need to verify again. They will just need to link in their apps that we're not familiar with, so the ones that they're distributing off of Play. Developers who don't publish on Play and we're not familiar with are going to need to verify in a similar process to what Play developers have done.
So does this affect apps that aren't published? Like if I'm an Android developer and I just want to create a sample app, do I have to verify that sample app?
If you're going to install it on your own device using ADB, for example,
or Android Studio, which uses ADB, but yes.
Then you're not going to need to verify.
Okay.
If you want other people to use it, then you'll need to verify because now other entities are involved. We want to keep those people safe.
Yeah. Or get them to install Android Studio. Right. That's me trying to get more users. Just kidding. So how does this work at the operating system level? Like if I'm installing an APK, via side loading, because we are still letting, I think I've heard that side loading is still...
It's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. I'm installing a side loaded app. How does that get verified? Is there some new certificate in the APK that is being used, or is there like a server round trip? Or can you fill us in on how this works?
In the operating system, we built a hook into the install flow. So any kind of install has to go through this verification. At the time of install, we reach out to a trusted entity on the device, the developer verifier. It's a preloaded app that has, it's exclusive, so there's only one on the device. So there's a single trusted entity that we ask whether or not there's a verified developer behind a package that we're installing. We'll pass the package name and the hash of the signing key as kind of the identifier for it. And then we're told by the verifier both whether or not it was verified, if it runs into any issues while verifying, and then what policy we should enforce.
Okay, so my phone has to be connected in order to install an APK?
In the worst of cases, yes.
What is the best case?
So in the best case, you hit cache.
Okay.
So this trusted entity, the developer verifier, can build all sorts of things on top of that kind of basic back and forth. They're building a cache of, to be determined what will be contained in it, but presumably popular apps. There's also a pre-auth, we call it a pre-auth token. It's basically a cryptographically verifiable blob that is associated with the package that's being installed, that the installer can pass in alongside the app and verify its the developer without having to hit backend.
Okay.
So if you're installing something from a store, as long as they can get the bytes for the APK, they can presumably also get the bytes for the pre-auth token and avoid any additional network back and forth.
Okay. So is this new in Android 16, 17, or is this like a mainline module update, or is this like GMS? Like where does this code live, and does it apply to all users starting in a certain time, or is it like once you upgrade to some OS level?
So the OS natively supports it in Android 16.1. So in the minor release that's coming out later this year. Actually, the first version of it is going out, or just went out in the 25Q4 beta 2, or the Android 16.1 beta 2.
But it's not on yet. It's just like the code lives.
Yeah, the code lives there. We're collecting metrics on it, but no enforcement will be happening this year and most of next year.
Okay.
But there will be backwards compatibility leveraging GPP, which is...
Sorry, what is GPP?
Google Play Protect.
Uh-huh.
And that's going to have slightly different behaviors in some cases just because of the difference between a native verifier in the operating system versus leveraging an existing APK. But the goal is to give global coverage to all Android devices.
That makes sense. All right, so what is the number one complaint from developers on this?
That's a tough one. I've heard lots of feedback.
I'm not saying you agree with it. I'm just saying, like, what is there a theme you've heard, and what would you say?
Well, I think side loading, I think, is one that comes up quite a bit. And I do think it's one that maybe not as understood as well. And so I think, as you mentioned before, side loading isn't going anywhere. It's very much kind of core and central to Android. I think just to be really clear and put a fine point on it, developers will be able to distribute their apps on, through side loading or other stores as long as they're verified. I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, another thing we hear quite a bit of anxiety is that, hey, I'm a student and I'm just getting started and I'm building my apps. I think so. ADB absolutely solves that problem from that perspective. But we have also talked about that, hey, we would allow, if there is a limited scope of distribution, you have, we'll create and we'll announce it very soon. We are trying to gather feedback from the developers who are early in the stage, and they don't want to have a mass distribution. For that, they don't need to go through all these hoops of ID verification and stuff. So for that, we will be launching a separate type of an account where they can go through very quickly, where there is
that one is lower cost.
There is actually, it would be free.
Even better. All right. So people who are Play developers, they have to pay something like, what, $25?
Yes.
And it's similar for this new account.
That's right.
So there's going to be a separate separate website you go to register. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's when you create these accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying there's going to be a student type account there, or hobbyist or whatever.
Yeah, something we will call it very limited distribution, where you are not trying to go to the masses. You just have a very finite set of people that you want to share your APK with.
Okay.
The use case is basically, if you know who is downloading the app, you guys know each other, you have a relationship, and you establish trust this way, and you distribute to a very, very small number of people.
Yeah.
The risk is considerably lower, and then we don't need to put you through the friction of verifying your identity.
Okay. Yeah, we've heard this quite a bit from like teachers, in classrooms.
That's right.
But you said, we're still verifying. You still have to upload ID. So what is it? The friction is just the payment, right? Or is there less?
No.
You have to do less work as a student?
That's right. So I think the only thing is you need to bring an email, and that's about it. And it's that simple. It's as simple as that.
But isn't that a major loophole then for a bad actor to say, yeah, I'm only going to share with my friends, but then actually, do we have a way to count? How do we make sure that it isn't going to be mass distributed?
Yeah, so I think the way we have been thinking about it is that number of devices that you can install on would be limited.
So when I install, that gets counted?
The way that we've been designing this piece of it is that you as a user, if you would like to get software from someone who's in this program, you give them an identifier from your device. There's a unique identifier that we're generating specifically for this purpose. So you have to, there's kind of a back and forth or established relationship with the developer.
Okay. So the actual publishing part is different.
That's right. It's just the two-way handshake that, hey, that user understands, and you as a developer can send an invite. They can throw back a token that you put in in the console, and then from there you can go and send them apps to install on their device. But at the end of the day, what we are trying to make sure is, if you have limited setup, like school is a good example, you are a teacher and you have students and you want to share it within your class, can we help you to at least distribute at a very small scale where everybody knows everybody?
Yeah.
And so then there is not a heightened risk. I think the issue and the solution that we are trying to bring is make sure that somebody has verified a developer for the masses, so that user doesn't have that huge risk at the time of install. But when you know each other, then there is not as much of a risk.
Okay.
But I want to sort of emphasize, we strongly encourage folks to register. The bar for registration is low. A payment is not ideal for everyone, but it's we think a manageable fee. And then it lets an individual or an organization distribute their app to anyone who wants it over basically eternity. The sort of free no ID check solution is ideal if you're not sure you want to develop an app, you're not sure you want to distribute your app to other people, you're really, really getting started. And then sort of you can take your first steps without the commitment of a fee and sharing your ID and all that.
And over time, we will let you convert, like when you become confident, we can convert your account type. Yeah. Makes sense. Going back, like if I am distributing on Play, we've already made everyone go through these hoops. So does that mean that we're going to make them do this again, or can we reuse what they've done? What they've already, like if I've already uploaded my identification to Google via Play, is that reusable?
Yeah, that's sufficient, right? Then you're verified in the ecosystem and you don't need to verify again.
So there's no work for me to do if I have a app in the Play Store and other stores?
If you have an account on the Play Store, you don't need to verify another identity.
Okay.
The only work you might need to do is if you have apps that are distributed exclusively off of Play, you're just going to need to tell us, hey, these are my apps, so we know they belong to someone.
The developer verification isn't just registering developers, it's also registering apps.
You're right. We divide this into two steps. One is establishing and verifying your identity, which is something that you should do one time when you set up the account, and ideally never do it again unless there's some big changes. And the second step is claiming apps, telling us, hey, these apps are mine. That you will do on an ongoing basis as you release more apps or as you change your certificates that you sign your apps with. So you're going to keep telling us, these are mine, these are mine, these are mine. That's should be a relatively quick step just to keep things up to date so we know that these apps belong to somebody when we see them.
Is this going to be like, handles on new social media sites where there's like a land grab? Like if I'm early, can I grab com.facebook.messenger?
We're not going to let you do that. So we're going to put in place governance for existing APKs. For future APK names, you will be able to grab whatever names you want.
So there's no name spacing with like if someone else has a package name, can I grab something similar to it? Do we do any kind of limitation there?
No, we don't. We've actually given it a lot of thought, and the package names are not really visible to users. So grabbing a package name doesn't give you a huge advantage. You can anyway pick.
I see it in the Play Store URL.
You're right. You see it there, and some stores show it in a pop-up when you download an app from them. But it's pretty hard to find it, and you need to be very mindful to look for it. The thing that really matters is the app icon and the app name that shows up on the device. And we're not going to start managing those. The situation stays as it is in Android.
Speaking of the Play Store, so you mentioned earlier that we had done this already and we had good results. Can you share more about what those good results were? Like, what data did we see that concluded that, well, this is actually the way to go?
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but we've seen double-digit reduction in bad actor activity on the Play Store. It just became too difficult for them. The way that a lot of the bad actors operate in these type of marketplaces is they create a lot of accounts. And by a lot, I mean huge numbers, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So when you think about a legitimate developer that says, hey, $25, that's a big fee, and I need to give my ID, and that's difficult. Now imagine somebody having to do that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times. It becomes really, really difficult. And even if you do it, it's very difficult to do it in a way that is unnoticeable. So you do it, and all these issues start showing up, and that's really turning our attention to these accounts, and then we can take care of them. And those bad actors don't monetize, they don't earn money. It's more difficult for them to sustain these operations. That's been going on Play for a while, and we're very happy with how it's working.
Okay, so we're expecting similar results here.
Yes.
Cool. Maybe I've watched too many movies, but I got the impression that like there are places you can go and basically, create companies where there's like, shell companies, and it's, like a web, and you can't actually figure out who owns them. Like, how do we deal with, sure, there's a legal document in some locale, but really, it's very easy to make more of those. Do we have any techniques, or is that, secret sauce for how we might deal with that?
It actually is secret sauce. But I'll just say, when you do those things, you leave breadcrumbs. And over the years, we've gotten pretty good at picking up on these breadcrumbs.
Okay, there goes my business plan. Just kidding. So we said it was $25 for most people, but free for hobbyists. Are there any other complaints you've heard beyond, the burden of doing this? I think sideloading, we're kind of understanding that sideloading is still allowed. The only burden is you can't, distribute without registering.
That's right.
Any other complaints or misunderstandings or legitimate complaints maybe that you've heard?
There are some nuances about certain scenarios. Maybe I don't know if you want to talk about like enterprises and their apps, perhaps.
We can mention that quickly. So Android is very big and used by a lot of people. And over the years, many use cases have been built over it. And such a big fundamental change is making some of these very niche solutions either not work or require some adaptations. So, for example, entities that distribute apps on devices that are not connected to the web in any way are going to need to figure out how to either leverage the tokens that Patrick mentioned or create a connection once in a while to get the permissions. We've made exceptions for enterprise management solutions. In an enterprise setup, there is an IT admin, and it's their responsibility to vet the apps that their users are installing. So if someone's using an enterprise management solution, they would be able to install apps that are not verified.
Oh, okay.
And again, we still recommend verifying. It's a straightforward, cheap process that guarantees everything will work, even if a device is outside of your management scope or people are installing on personal profiles or whatever. But we have carved out an exception where there is a responsible party that's in charge of the security. But in general, this complexity of the ecosystem is something that we're working through. And one of the reasons we've announced the program so much in advance is that we need to get this feedback, hear about it, and think how we address it. I think that the toughest sort of feedback we've heard is, hey, anonymity is going away. And I understand that. There is something very fundamental about being able to distribute apps anonymously. The tension is obvious, right? Anonymity is good for people who need it for good purposes, but it's also very, very convenient for bad actors. And we think we reached a point where that trade-off is causing much more harm than good, which is why we need to sort of change the balance a little bit.
Yeah, you had something that Raz mentioned I think is important. I think broadly we've heard feedback from developers that it's important when we have big policy changes to get a heads up. And so we're being very intentional with like a year in advance from enforcement because we know that the change, it takes a while to kind of like understand and then figure out like what it means to you and your business and your apps, et cetera. And so we do have an early access program. I think we invested quite a bit in developer support as well. There's some documentation out there existing, more to be coming. But we also want to be as helpful as we can and not just kind of throw this over the fence and expect people just to kind of react to it. So I think we want to be responsive to the feedback, and there is opportunity to continue to provide feedback as the program continues to evolve, and we're very open to that feedback. So
one thing that's not clear to me is that let's say you have someone who verifies and they're a bad actor, and then they spread malware. Then what? I mean, I understand that in the Play Store, well, your account gets banned. Can your verification get banned? What are the policy things that are associated with this?
So the way we are thinking about this is that we'll call it as a limited restriction for the developers who we find that they're associated with distributing malware on Android. And so there will be a time period until when all the apps that they have claimed would not be installable on user devices.
I see. Would this have sort of all the policies? I mean, we have some policies in the Play Store like, hey, you must have a privacy policy and so on. Is that the kind of thing that, hey, no privacy policy, therefore your apps are banned?
No, actually, so there are no other policies other than the high degree of harm, like malware.
This is clearly malware.
Yes. So today, as you know, we already have those policies on certified devices where you cannot distribute malware, and then we have Google Play Protect that removes that app from user devices. So it's the same bar. And what we're going to now add to that to say that, hey, we were already doing this today on certified devices. Now, additionally, if we know that actor who was associated with that app, most likely other apps might have harm as well. So we're going to also restrict installation of that. So it immediately brings that level of protection to the user.
I see. Because I was thinking that I could imagine someone becoming a broker. Like someone saying, hey, I will verify my account and I will put, come to me. I'll just basically be, the equivalent of a VPN server. And so I was wondering, hey, would this be against the rules? But I imagine that if actually the whole account can get banned,
That's right.
Then that may not be a good business to be in.
And I'll use this to plug in sort of a related topic. There's a mini industry of people publishing apps that they didn't create. We don't object to that, but by publishing an app, you take responsibility for everything that's in the app. And we've seen people get their accounts banned because they agreed to publish an app for somebody for a small fee, and they thought they were making easy money. But those are very, very sophisticated malware actors that are intentionally targeting people to distribute their apps without the risk of getting banned. Many developers are getting emails saying, hey, I've noticed you have a developer account. Would you mind publishing an app for me? And the vast majority know to stay away from it and warn each other. But some people get tempted, and it's risky. So
I've heard that it's one thing to publish a new app, but I've heard people saying, hey, I noticed you haven't updated your app in 5 years. I'll buy it from you. And so you kind of take over the reputation and users of that app. And your new update has some extra payload in it.
As buy and sell of companies and apps would always happen, I think at the end of the day, what happens is that where does the buck stop? And at the end of the day, if you're claiming that app or you're buying an app from somebody else, then now you're accountable. I think that's how we will think from the system perspective, that now you're accountable if anything bad happens across all your portfolio of apps.
Is there going to be a public registry of Android app vendors? I mean, I know that, like in the Play Store, you can sort of see, for example, the address for anyone who's charging and so on, right? Because of legal reasons, I guess. Is there going to be a way where if I give you my address and I register with you, my address will be publicly searchable?
No.
Great. Nice, clean answer.
No, I'll reinforce it.
Great, thanks. What about this 2% business? I heard that almost all apps are in the Play Store will automatically be registered, but there's some small number. What are the criteria for when you have to do extra work if you're in the Play Store and you still have to do extra work here? I think I read something about where there are other app stores with conflicting keys or something like that, or package names. Sorry.
We're still working through some of the nuance of this, but in general, when we have the same APK name showing up in different places, we're going to try and have one developer use that APK name, if possible, and have other developers change APK names. We realize that's difficult, and we're going to have some flexibility in this process.
Flexibility meaning that there might be more than one, like the package names may not be unique?
There might be cases for legacy packages where we will allow duplication.
And on the OS side, you're good with that? This is not, we're not going to be like,
No.
Okay.
On the device, we can only ever have one package name key combination, signing key combination. But as long as you're not trying
that's
to
always
install
been the
both
case.
at the
That's always been the case.
Yeah.
Even if I had other side-loaded stuff, I couldn't side-load
Yep.
and, okay, yeah.
In some cases where there's an app on the Play Store, but it's sort of minor compared to an app with the same name that's not on the Play Store, then the developer on the Play Store might need to do some work, either change an app name, or if there's a really good reason why they can't change the app name, then explain that to us and we'll figure out the solution.
I'm still curious about the implementation. Like if I'm trying to sideload something with a package name and there are two packages registered, I guess you would look at the identity then. Is the identity built into the APK?
Yeah, so from the platform's perspective, the combination of package name and signing key are the unique identifier for
Okay.
it. So we pass those 2 bits of information along to the verifier, and then it tells us whether or not it's verified.
Okay. I was a little confused about the whole process for registering packages, because you have to upload these APKs, but it's not the real APK. It's some, and maybe this is not an OS thing. Maybe this is more of a, Play Store and or console, whatever the new, what is the new console called?
Android Developer
Console. Okay. Yeah. So the process is that I upload my key and then I upload an APK, and how do I build this APK? Is that just an indirect way of getting you to sign something? And could we have a better way?
Yeah, I think it's still under development. Just saw a demo of it a couple days ago.
It feels like that should just be a Gradle plugin. Like built into Android Studio, you just run some task, and it takes the signing configurations you have in your build files, and it spits out some, as opposed to this very indirect building of an APK.
I think longer term, there's no reason it couldn't be.
Okay.
Right now, it's we're still building up tooling and still building everything up. There's like a sample app that you can use, populate a specific token inside of that sample app in a file somewhere, sign it and upload it. A lot of that is can be automatable.
It just feels like I already have the app. I have my signing certificates. I have all this build logic to pick the right key based on the right variant name. Sometimes the variant, the package ID is dynamic, right? I may have multiple variants, right? Like the pro version and the ad-supported version. So it feels like it should be part of the build process. And as I was reading the sort of the mocks for this, it looks like there's some crypto happening. That was my take. Like, okay, we want the public key, and then we want you to do something, and then we want that.
Yeah, we want to make sure that you actually have the key. Because if you just have something that's been signed by the key, you could have gotten that from anywhere. I can go download the Facebook app today, and it's already signed, and I could claim.
And we don't want to ask for the private key, because
Correct.
People are going to be like, what are you going to do with this?
Yep. So we just want proof that you can sign something with that key.
That makes sense.
Just to clarify, you're only going to need to do that process for apps that are in the wild. If you're creating a new app, we've never seen that APK name, you can just tell us, these are my keys. There's no risk of using someone else's APK. Right, so
good clarification.
Yeah, if you think about the future, sort of after we register the whole backlog of existing apps, that shouldn't happen very frequently.
I see. So this is primarily for people who only distribute in other app stores.
It's for apps that are out in the wild today, and there's a question about ownership, right? If you show up and you say, hey, I own whatever com.google.apk, we're going to say, hey, that app already exists. It has users. Can you prove to us that you really own it?
Yeah.
And then we're going to need you to go through that process.
And again, that only applies if I haven't published in the Play Store.
If you publish on the Play Store, we know you have ownership.
So that's what this is for. Okay, so for most people, this is going to be pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Is there anything else that, you want to make clear to the developer population? What was the hardest part about the verification when you added it to the Play Store?
The hardest part was getting legacy developers to go through the process. So we created this process. It took us a while to tweak it and make sure that we get it right, and there's no unnecessary friction and steps in it. And then new developers started going through it. And that was challenging, and we learned a lot through it. But then when we went back to all the existing developers and we said, hey, we now need you guys to go through this process, that was very difficult because not everyone's on top of their communications, not everyone's active and maintaining their accounts.
I feel like we also, it was like, you have to pick the month you want to be verified or something. And I didn't understand why. Why do I pick the month? Why don't I just do it? Was there some sort of in-person video call or something? Or is this going to be just upload pictures? Or is there some sort of face-to-face, prove that you're a human kind of meeting to do this?
No, there's no face-to-face prove you're meeting. There's always exception cases where contact is required, but those are very, very rare.
How do you guard against, Photoshop, or I guess at this point it's Nano Banana, but, how do you get a picture of a driver's license in a country that you're not super familiar with and trust it?
There are teams in Google who do this for a living.
Yeah.
And
There's a little secret sauce there, but yeah.
Okay. First, we look for the Made by Gemini badge in the bottom right corner. Yeah.
I think one thing we should touch upon is individuals versus organization. That's two different kinds of account. And so there is a different level of data or what you need to upload based on that. So for organization, for example, we ask for DUNS number. So that's one of the way that we know that you are a registered entity.
Yeah.
For individuals, it's mostly maybe your local driver's license or something would be sufficient.
And we don't have the concept of friends, right? The reason I'm bringing this up, like my sister has an app on the Play Store, and it was developed, her and a friend developed it. And so when verification happened, it was kind of tricky. You kind of had to pick one whose name it was, even though it was like two people who equally worked on this. But they're not, this was still a hobbyist thing, kind of, not like an actual, like, let's get a dunce number and register, like it wasn't to that level. Is this a pattern that's common? Or, I mean, I'm guessing not, but how do you think about this?
You could have multiple users on the account, right? One would need to verify their identity, but you could have more than one user.
So in that scenario, I would say is that if it's like two people, is it an organization or you are just treating it as, oh, this is just an individual developer, then just create an individual developer account and that should be sufficient.
Yeah, I guess this is where, verification really is an individual, and it's like the Play Store listing might be something different. Anything else on the implementation that you're excited about?
In kind of spirit of we're looking for feedback, we're looking to respond to developers' inputs here, we built the operating system to be flexible. We basically just ask a yes or no question, and you as the developer verification module, you tell us what to do.
And that one is updatable. So if there were to be changes in the future, due to regulation or whatever, we could make that change.
Yep, okay. Exactly. We kind of went about designing it with that in mind, that we will be looking for feedback from the developer community on this.
What is the timeline for all of this?
So I think early access was October, right? When it opened?
Early access to the Android Developer Console is going to start in October, where a lot of developers have expressed interest and registered and told us, hey, we want to be part of this, and we're going to start inviting them slowly at the beginning and faster later. In November, we're going to start doing the same with some Play developers, primarily ones who have to claim Play packages that are off Play. We want to make sure that those experiences work and make sense and are as easy as possible for developers. We're targeting to begin initial enforcement of this late 2026, right now in a select few countries. And then we're aiming to roll this out globally early in 2027.
What's the reason we're doing it on a per country basis?
We mostly want to be careful. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of edge cases, and we want to make sure that we're not missing anything, that nobody's been sort of under a rock and hasn't heard that this is happening.
And that's easy to do. Because normally we do like 1% rollout or whatever, which will be, you kind of want to shard it across the world so you sort of catch all the edge cases. But I guess if you're in a country, you could really have people on the ground paying attention. Is that
So the difficulty with doing something like a 1% rollout is if we enforce on 1% of users globally, that means all the developers in the world have to register.
Good
because
point.
You don't know who's going to be getting your app. And even if we do it by regions, most developers distribute globally and a lot will need to register, but the sort of ability to track it and manage it is
so the per country rollout is based on the location of where the developers are, not where the users are installing the apps.
Where the users are.
Doesn't that mean that you're back to the whole like developers have to, if I have any apps installed in one of these countries, I, a developer, have to deal with it, right?
Yes. It's not perfect, but you have
What
control.
if you were to do it the other way? What if it were to be like, hey, any developers in Norway, all apps that have Norwegian developers, you have until November?
We've considered that. The challenge with this is that whenever we do things like that, everyone says that they're from another country. And then you create sort of
But isn't the whole point that you have to show where you live? I guess organizations can all say they're in Bahamas or whatever, right? But as at least an individual.
Yeah, but now you're adding this extra friction, right, where people try to get through or try to delay it.
Yeah. I can also see how people are like, why are you singling us out?
But also, if you're saying, hey, only developers in Norway have to do it, then you could just say you're from Sweden and you don't have to show anything, right? So we don't know where you're from.
Isn't address part of the registration?
Right, but if you'd only ask developers from a certain place to register, others wouldn't register, so you wouldn't
wouldn't
have their
register. Oh,
address.
good point. Duh. Yeah.
So let me add something to that, which is also the consumer side angle to this. Because when we think about enforcement, it's on the user devices, right? So you want to also try to contain the user base and their expectation is universal. You don't want to create an experience where saying that, hey, this app failed to install, but other apps are going through.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's where I think constraining the consumers in one region actually makes it easier. The expectation for the users using that Android phone is clear and it's clean.
Yeah, this all makes sense. You've thought more about it than I have. That's good. Have we picked the countries yet?
We're working on that.
Okay.
We have sort of an initial list, but it's still far away, so we'll see.
Yeah, I just want to again, once the early access starts to roll out, please want to encourage everyone, don't wait till last minute. Please, verify early and often, and provide feedback. Be helpful.
Yeah, I was going to stole my line. The early access form is still open. We really would encourage everybody who they think that they're unique, please come and register, because we are looking for scenarios where we have not thought through. And once you are in the program, that will help us to make sure that we are really doing service to all your unique situations.
And we're reviewing all the feedback. Just it's not going into the ether. Like it's actually, we're reviewing it on a weekly basis. So please share feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the Play Store, we can sort of access, we can notify developers. But what about other stores? Have we talked to them? Do we have a sort of sense of how they feel about this and whether they can help sort of bring the message out to their registered developers?
We're engaging with stores. There's a lot of actors in this ecosystem. We're engaging with as many as we can, and we're counting on them to spread the word. We're counting on media and press to spread the word. One of the reasons we're here today is to spread the word and make sure that people are aware.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we were thinking maybe in the developer tools we could do something as well. I also want to see if we can do something about those APKs. Yeah, I feel like I've kind of run out of questions. I think this is all pretty clear to me. I just want to make sure that we kind of addressed all the concerns that people were complaining about. I think we have. I mean, the most important thing for me was to make sure I understood, the why. This is clearly more work. People don't like more work, right? But the idea here is to make it harder to harm users, and so that's the extra price we're paying for it.
That's right.
Right.
And we don't intend it to be a lot of work. Many developers have gone through the process on Play. It works at scale. So we're pretty confident that it's manageable and not too disruptive.
And did we talk enough about you mentioned that there was some complaint that, hey, you can't be anonymous anymore. What are the legitimate use cases to be anonymous? Is it like apps for dissidents and things like that? Is that?
Yeah, that's an example. It's a good question. It's not clear when anonymity is absolutely required, and it's not like Google's going to share that information with the public or anything like that. But a lot of people just value their privacy and they want their anonymity. I think that's the main driver, right? People just want to do things anonymously.
Yeah, no, that comes with a lot of risk for users. So I guess this is why we're doing it. All right, any final parting thoughts?
I mean, one thing I would say is that this is a journey, and I know that this is a big change for the ecosystem. But then I think at the end of the day, we want the Android ecosystem to be healthy and user safe. And that's what this is all about. And we are trying to get as much feedback as we can and then iterate over it. And so we're listening.
Yeah, it is kind of heartbreaking when people, have their life savings stolen and so on because they thought, they were on the phone and, and the scammer says, oh yeah, no, you need to install this app. Just click yes, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And they comply, and suddenly their bank information is that's terrible.
And maybe we didn't talk enough about that, right? Those are real cases. People get tricked and manipulated, and those scammers, those fraud rings are very good at finding vulnerable people and finding them when they're weak and they need something and pressuring them. And even though there's a lot of built-in control and protection in the operating system, when the user has full control, they can be pressured to do things that are bad for them, especially users who are not very technical and don't understand the implications.
I get family members asking me, hey, what does this message mean? Is it okay to say yes or no, right? But I think if someone, they're on the phone and they accidentally call the wrong towing service, someone had a tricky number or whatever, and they're asking, oh yeah, install the roadside assistance app. Don't worry about that. We haven't figured out the back end issue. Blah blah blah. Social engineering is a skill, right? And when someone is in a high pressure situation, it's very easy to say yes to these things. It's terrible when that happens. Makes me personally mad when people are defrauded. So yeah, that's why we're doing this. So thank you all for working on it. We understand that, there's extra burden for developers, but, has to be done. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for hosting us.
And if you want to register for early access for developer verification, you should use the link that should be showing on the screen right now. Or if you're listening, check out the show notes.